I stood before the bathroom mirror, the flickering white light from an old bulb casting harsh shadows on the dark circles under my eyes. The black dress I wore still carried the faint scent of lilies from my husband's funeral earlier today. That funeral, a blur of condolences, awkward hugs, and pitying glances, felt like it belonged to someone else. But in my mind, it wasn't the image of the oak coffin or the pastor's eulogy that lingered. It was him, Ryan, my husband's old best friend, the man I looked straight in the eyes amidst a crowded room and said, "I'll be waiting for you tonight." Those words, like a stone tossed into a still lake, rippled through the secrets I'd buried for too long. I didn't know if I had the courage to face what might come next, but I knew one thing. I couldn't keep living a lie. I'm Emma, 34 years old, living in a quiet suburb of Denver, Colorado. I work part-time at the local library, shelving books, helping kids find their favorite comics, and sometimes reading stories to them on Saturday afternoons. It's not a glamorous job, but it gives me space to think, sometimes too much space. I was married to James for 11 years. He was a software engineer at a big tech firm downtown, a charming man with a smile that could make anyone trust him. But behind that smile was a master liar who made me doubt myself for years. James died 3 days ago in a car accident on Interstate 25. The police said he was speeding and crashed into a semi-truck. No one survived. I didn't cry as much as people expected, not because I wasn't heartbroken, but because I'd run out of tears years ago. During the nights, I sat alone in the living room, reading messages he sent to other women, smelling unfamiliar perfume on his shirts, and listening to excuses I knew were lies. I tried to forgive, to hold on to the picture-perfect family I dreamed of. But forgiveness didn't erase the scars. It only made them deeper, like cracks in a wall I couldn't fix. Today, at the church, I stood by the coffin, shaking hands with the mourners, nodding thanks for condolences I barely heard. Everything felt like a fog. Neighbors, James's co-workers, people I'd met only once. They all looked at me with pity, as if I were a fragile porcelain vase about to shatter. I hated it. I hated how they thought I'd collapse, that I needed comforting with cliches about time healing all wounds. I didn't need time. I needed truth. Then I saw Ryan. He stood in the far corner of the church, wearing a slightly outdated black suit, his brown hair tousled as if he'd rushed over from a construction site. Ryan used to be James's best friend, the brother James called the only one who gets me. They met in college, sharing wild years of late-night parties, camping trips, and loud arguments that always ended in laughter. I met Ryan 12 years ago when James brought me to a party at his apartment. I remember thinking Ryan was different, not loud like James, not trying to steal the spotlight, but with a sincerity that made me want to talk to him more. But life pulled us apart. I married James. Ryan stayed in our lives, but only as a friend, showing up at barbecues or weekend basketball games. Everything changed 4 years ago at a backyard barbecue at our house. Ryan pulled James aside, and I overheard them arguing, not the playful bickering of old, but a heated, angry fight. Ryan accused James of cheating. James denied it, calling Ryan a liar, a jealous traitor. I stood by the kitchen door, listening to every word, my heart pounding. When Ryan left, he looked at me, his eyes full of hurt and disappointment. "You need to know the truth, Emma," he said before walking out. I didn't respond. I turned away, choosing to protect my marriage, even though I knew deep down that Ryan was right. After that night, Ryan vanished from our lives. James never mentioned him, and I didn't ask. But I couldn't stop thinking about Ryan. Not romantically, but about his honesty, the way he dared to say what no one else would. I wondered where he was, what he was doing, if he ever thought of me the way I thought of him. Today, when our eyes met across the crowded room, time seemed to stop. Ryan didn't look away or bow his head like the others. He held my gaze, his green eyes full of the sincerity I hadn't seen in years. I didn't think. I walked over, kept my voice steady, and said, "I'll be waiting for you tonight." I don't know why I said it. Maybe I was tired of pretending. Maybe I wanted just once to be honest with myself. Ryan didn't answer right away. He just nodded slightly, as if he understood. And then I turned back to playing the role of the widow everyone expected. The black dress for a gray sweater and jeans. Our 2-story house was the same as ever. White walls, beige sofa, family photos on the walls I no longer wanted to see. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the neatly stacked dishes in the cabinet, things James and I bought when we moved here 10 years ago. Everything looked perfect, but I knew the truth. This house, this marriage, it was all a facade. I brewed a pot of peppermint tea, sat at the kitchen table, and waited. The wall clock ticked, each second stretching endlessly. I wasn't sure Ryan would come. I wasn't sure I wanted him to. But I knew, if he did, everything would change. I picked up my phone, scrolling through condolence texts from friends and family. One, from my mom, "Are you okay? Call me if you need me." I didn't reply. I didn't know if I was okay. I just knew I didn't want to keep pretending. The doorbell rang at 8:45 p.m. My heart pounded like I was a 17-year-old waiting for a first date. I stood, took a deep breath, and opened the door. Ryan stood there in a dark green jacket and jeans, his green eyes hesitant but unwavering. "I didn't think you'd come," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "I wasn't sure either," he replied, a faint smile on his lips. "But here I am." I invited him in, leading him to the kitchen table. We sat across from each other, 2 steaming mugs of tea between us in the silence. I didn't know where to start, so I asked, "What have you been up to these past 4 years?" Ryan shrugged. "Working for a construction company, moved to a small apartment near downtown Denver, trying to live a normal life." "You?" I laughed, but there was no joy in it. Trying to hold together a marriage that wasn't real. Trying to be the wife everyone thought I should be. He looked at me, not judging, just listening. I told him about James, not the James in our wedding photos, with his perfect smile and warm eyes, but the real James, the husband who came home late, smelling of whiskey and lies, who made me stay up nights, wondering what I'd done wrong. "I tried to warn you," Ryan said, his voice low. "At that barbecue, I wanted you to know the truth." I nodded. "I know, but I wasn't ready to face it. I chose wrong. I chose James, even though I knew he didn't deserve it." We talked for hours, not about grand things, but about the fragments of our lives. I told him about the days I woke up and didn't know who I was, about the nights I sat alone in the living room, hearing James's key in the lock at 2 a.m. Ryan told me about his job, the buildings he'd helped construct, his small apartment with a window overlooking the Rockies. He told me he'd never really forgotten me, even though he'd tried. That confession made me catch my breath. "Are you serious?" I asked. He nodded. "I thought about you more than I should have, Emma, even when I tried not to." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stood, walked to the living room bookshelf, and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a letter James had left, written a few months before he died. I'd never opened it, afraid of what it might reveal. I handed it to Ryan. "Read it," I said. He hesitated, then unfolded it. The letter was short, a few scrawled lines. James apologized for his mistakes, but also blamed me, his job, everything but himself. Ryan folded it back, looked at me. "You deserve better than this, Emma." I didn't cry. I was too exhausted to cry. But I felt a crack in the wall I'd built around myself. "I don't want to be alone tonight," I said. "Not because I'm weak, but because I need someone to see me, really see me." Ryan nodded. "I see you, Emma. I always have." We didn't touch. There were no movie-like romantic moments. We just sat there, sharing the silence, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. When the clock struck midnight, Ryan stood. "I should go," he said. I nodded, but as he reached the door, I called out, "Are you free tomorrow?" "I need help fixing some things around the house." He smiled. "I'm free." The next day, Ryan showed up with an old toolbox and a slight smile. I handed him a short list, a loose lock on the back door, a flickering bulb in the hallway, and a wobbly bookshelf in the study. We worked together, unhurried. He told me about the buildings he'd constructed, the satisfaction of finishing a home someone would call their own. I told him about the books I loved, the afternoons I spent at the library, dreaming of a different life, one where I didn't have to pretend. While Ryan fixed the bookshelf, I realized I was watching him, not as an old friend, but as a man I might have loved if time had been different. The thought scared me, but it also made me feel alive. "Have you ever thought about what we could have..." I trailed off, unsure what I meant. Ryan stopped screwing, looked at me. "Yeah," he said simply. "A lot. But I didn't want to be the one to long time ago," I said, my voice low. "Not by you, but by me, by the choices I made." Ryan didn't say anything, just kept working, but I knew he was listening. When we finished, I invited him to stay for lunch. I made chicken and avocado sandwiches, and we sat on the back porch, watching golden leaves fall in the Colorado autumn breeze. "I wrote a letter to myself once," I said, pulling out my phone and opening an old note. 2 years ago, when I thought about leaving James, I read aloud, "I want to be seen. I want to be loved without fear. I want to be Emma, not someone's wife." Ryan looked at me, his eyes gentle but steady. "You can still be Emma," he said. "You never lost her." Over the next few days, Ryan became part of my life. He helped me clean out the garage, repaint the living room wall, and even played basketball with Ethan, my 10-year-old son, in the backyard. Ethan liked Ryan. "He's funny," he said one night as I tucked him into bed. "He's not like Dad." I smiled, but my heart felt heavy. James was never a bad father, but he was often absent, even when he was home. The evenings he spent at his computer working or pretending to, while Ethan sat alone with his iPad, are still vivid in my mind. One afternoon, as Ryan and I sorted through James's old things in the basement, I found a locked metal box. I hesitated, then used bolt cutters to open it. Inside were letters, photos, and a USB drive. I plugged the USB into my laptop, my heart racing. It held emails James sent to a woman named Sarah, not just once, but over years. Words of love, plans for trips, promises of a future I was never part of. I wasn't shocked. I was just tired, as if all my energy had been drained. Ryan stood behind me, his hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to read them all," he said, but I shook my head. "I need to know." The emails cut like knives through what little I had left of James. He hadn't just cheated, he'd lived a double life, with secrets and promises I'd never been privy to. I shut the laptop, stood, and for the first time that day, I cried. Ryan didn't say anything. He just held me, letting me lean into him until the tears stopped. "I loved him," I whispered, "but I'm not sure I ever really knew him." Ryan nodded. "He was my friend, but he wasn't who I thought he was. And you deserve to be loved by someone who doesn't make you doubt yourself." The climax came a few weeks later. Ryan and I were on the living room sofa, watching Sleepless in Seattle, a 90s movie we both loved. Ethan was asleep, the house quiet except for the soft laughter from the TV. The air between us was thick with unspoken things, like an invisible thread pulling us closer. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't see my husband's old friend. I saw Ryan, the man who'd always been honest, who'd stood by me when I needed him most, who made me feel like myself again. "Ryan," I said, my voice trembling. "If I said I wanted to try, to see what we could be, what would you say?" He turned to me, his eyes serious but warm. "I'd say I've been waiting for you to say that for a long time. But I'd also say we need to go slow. Not because I don't want this, but because you need time. And I want to do this right." I smiled, tears rolling down my cheeks. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Scared I don't know how to love without getting hurt." Ryan reached out, brushing my cheek with his thumb, his touch warm and gentle. "You don't have to be perfect. Just be you. I'll be here, no matter what." We didn't kiss then, but when the movie ended, I rested my head on his shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around me. It wasn't a grand, romantic moment like in the movies. It was just real, more real than anything I'd ever had with James. And in that moment, I knew I was ready to let go of the past. 3 months later, Ryan and I started dating officially. There was no rush. We took walks in Red Rocks Park, ate dinner at small restaurants in Lodo, and spent time with Ethan. I started painting again, watercolor landscapes of Colorado's mountains, winding roads, and fiery sunsets. Ethan called Ryan Uncle D, and I saw a light in my son's eyes I hadn't seen when James was alive. One day, eating ice cream at Little Man, Ethan asked, "Is Uncle D going to stay with us forever?" I looked at Ryan, who smiled and said, "I hope so, buddy." My heart warmed, like a puzzle piece had found its place. We didn't avoid talking about James. I told Ryan about the early days when James and I were young, climbing in Boulder and laughing like the world was ours. Ryan shared stories of their friendship, the times they fixed cars or drank beers in the garage, and how he tried to help James change but couldn't. We didn't pretend the past didn't exist. But one night, as we Ryan did and I sat on the porch, watching stars twinkle over the Colorado sky, I took his hand. "Thank you," I said, "for not giving up on me." He smiled, squeezing my hand. "I never planned to, Emma." 6 months later, we moved in together, not because we had to, but because it felt right. I sold the old house, filled with memories of James, and we rented a small place in Highlands with a backyard big enough for Ethan to play ball. I hung my watercolor paintings on the walls, and Ryan built a new bookshelf for my book collection. Ethan started calling Ryan D without the uncle, and I knew that no matter how painful the past had been, we were building a real future. This is my story, the story of finding myself again after lies, heartbreak, and secrets that should never have been kept. If you've ever faced betrayal, if you're searching for light in the darkness, or if you just want to share your own story, drop a comment below and join us at The Cheater's Diary. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and follow the channel so you don't miss more heartfelt stories. Every story deserves to be told, and we want to hear yours. See you in the next video.